Welcome to the Sober Unicorn. We are a gay hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey everybody, it's Holden back here again with the Sober Unicorn. Today we are joined by Metz. How are you doing, Metz?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing today?
Doing absolutely fabulous. Just woke up from a nap, so living my best life as I possibly could be. Um, so Metz and I actually met at a local Fort Worth group here in the local Fort Worth area, and we hit it off pretty quickly when we met and everything like that. We hung out, we've had dinner a couple times, and I wanted to bring them on and have Metz share their story and their experience in sobriety and their journey. So why don't you tell everybody like who you are, what your name, well, what your age is, and what your drug of choice was, and how long you've been sober.
Of course. My name is Mestume Baron, Metz for short. I use they, them, but I kind of don't care what's thrown my way. I am 28 years old, and my sobriety date is September 14th of 2020. And I was a major alcoholic, mainly being beer and rum.
So,
And
you, so
go
you're
ahead.
coming up on 2 years.
I am.
That is absolutely amazing. I just hit 8 months on Tuesday, so I'm like,
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm kind of looking forward to the 2 year mark, but we're just gonna take it day by day at this point. So, kind of give everybody a small backstory on like what led up to kind of you needing to get sober, and how did the beginning of your sobriety journey kind of play out?
Okay. A little bit backstory about my upbringing. I grew up in San Jose, California. Um, I lived with my parents and my older brother. My mom was a social drinker. My dad did not drink, and my brother was a normie. We always had alcohol around for entertainment purposes and cooking, so it was nothing weird to have. My first drink was at 5 years old. I took a sip of some beer that my mom was using to cook. I asked permission for it first, which is the funniest thing. I knew I wasn't supposed to have it. And so I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, could I take a sip of this beer? And she got this knowing smile on her face, thinking I was going to hate it because I was like 5. So she's like, Sure, go for it. And I took a sip, and it's one sip. It's not going to do anything like drunken wise, but I loved everything about it. It was like nothing I experienced before. I loved the taste. I loved the burn. And I was just like, this isn't like orange juice at all. This is fantastic. And I remember asking for another sip. And I have yet to see my mom look that horrified ever. And so that just kind of started things off. Um, I went to college up in Portland from 2012 to 2016, and the last 2 years of college is when I started really heavily drinking daily, and then I didn't start blackout daily drinking until I graduated and was living with a bunch of friends in a house that we were renting, and it just really took off from there. And then um, I was living in Texas during that time, and then I moved back to California. And the work culture that I was in really emphasized drinking after, a project or a presentation or something like that. So I was literally getting paid to drink on the job, and I thought I was like, I made it. Like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And of course, I was going harder than any of my other coworkers because it was free. What else do you do? And um which made me stay longer at work because I had to be somewhat coherent to drive back to my house where I had more alcohol waiting for me. And it wasn't until the COVID shutdown that I realized how much that I was doing and I wasn't even aware of it. Uh, so at the beginning of COVID, I moved apartments and then I helped my brother move into a different house and I had the truck and I don't remember any of it. And I was driving the entire time. And it's not like we were moving down the street, we were moving between cities. So that was a little bit eye awakening, like opening for me because I like the social interactions. Okay, fine. I don't remember the conversation, but like having a giant vehicle on the highway constantly and not remembering doing that was really terrifying for me. Not because, oh my gosh, I could have gotten hurt. I was more worried that my brother's safety was in jeopardy. And what really pushed me is one of my housemates at the time. He was dealing with someone else who was drinking in his life, and I saw him completely fully break down from that damage and that emotional baggage. And that was the first time of me seeing the fullness of what I was doing to people. Because when people approached me about my drinking and how it was affecting them, it was always with anger. It was always with a lot of fury, and I don't respond too well to force. If I'm met with force, I will meet it with equal force, and so I would just get angry back. But to see someone completely torn apart and knowing that I was doing that to the people I cared about most, I it kind of snapped me out of it, and I couldn't justify doing that anymore. And when I first got sober, it wasn't like I said to myself, I have to stop drinking forever. I wanted to see how long I could last. It was a challenge for me. And then the withdrawal started hitting. And then that's when I was like, okay, I need help. I can't do this on my own. What is this recovery program? What do you guys have to offer? And that's when I got started in it.
So were you a, because you said 2020, so were you a Zoom baby?
I was a Zoom baby. Um, which wasn't weird for me because I do a lot of video games. And so having people online that are like my actual friends that I've never met in person was not a weird or different experience for me. That was the normal. So doing recovery on Zoom, it felt just as real to me as anything else. And at that time, I was already working remotely for months away from my friends, and that was the only way to talk to them. And so, yeah, that wasn't bizarre or weird to me at all. What was weird was going to recovery in person and seeing everyone. And I kind of forgot how extroverted I was. And I kind of forgot how, like, huggy of a person that I am. And it was kind of a nice reminder, but it was also like, oh, geez, how much have I been denying myself this entire time, you know?
For sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, for anybody listening that got sober through Zoom, you know what? Props to you, babe, because I am a person that craves social interaction. Throughout my entire drinking career, I was a bar drinker. I wasn't a home drinker because I always said that if I drink at home to get drunk, that's what constituted me being an alcoholic. So I drink at bars, and so I think I've attended like two Zoom meetings, and it's just not the same. I mean, I can't be zooming trying to get my recovery on while like laying in bed in my PJs. Like I just can't do it. So because I got sober in 2021, at the end of 2021. So thankfully, Texas, of course, being as red of a state as it is, had already reopened. Had I think at that point, AA meetings were actually deemed a necessity, so they were actually able to open a lot sooner than many other businesses. But yeah, I mean, I needed my social interaction, baby, because I don't know what I would have done without it. So going into a 12-step meeting. Like, did you initially hate the 12 steps? Did you have to grow accustomed to them, or did you come in with like a completely open mind, considering the withdrawals and you just wanting people to help you through it?
That's a very good question. I came into the program literally knowing nothing. Kind of along the lines of I thought it was like Fight Club. If you were in it, you just didn't talk about it because I didn't hear anyone talk about it. And my extended family has quite a lot of alcoholics, and quite a few of my older cousins have um, passed away from their addictions, and they weren't in recovery. I never even heard of recovery even happening. And one of my housemates at the time, um, I knew that he was in recovery, but I didn't know anything about it. So when I started having withdrawals, and my to give you backstory on what my withdrawals were like, I was uncontrollably shaking, like I couldn't stand up, so I was lying on the ground. I was sobbing harder than I ever had in my life. And as real as I thought gravity was, I could have sworn my skull was splitting apart. So I was just having my hands on my head, trying desperately to keep my skull together. And the entire time, my brain was telling me that I was being attacked and that I needed to get away. And I couldn't because I was shaking too hard to stand up, which made me freak out more. And it was just a vicious cycle. And yeah, I thought that was the moment that I was unhinging. I was like, this is it. I'm officially going insane. I'm never going to be able to do anything ever again. And so that's what my withdrawals were like. And that's what pushed me into the program. The only thing I knew about the program is you said your name and they say it back. That's it. I didn't know there were steps. I didn't know there was literature. I didn't know there was a sponsor thing. I didn't know there was service. I knew there were chips, but I thought they were poker chips as a joke. And you have to know what they mean. Like it wasn't like written on the chip what they meant. And so when I got in and I discovered that there was a lot of things to fall back on, there's a lot of things to reference, and there's a lot of not self will that made me feel a lot better because at that moment in time, I really came to realize that my self will, my own strength was garbage. Because I would promise my okay, so right before I stopped drinking, my some weird thing happened. I couldn't use my debit card, right? And so I Venmoed my friend some cash, and he pulled it out, and so I had some cash on me, and I blew all the cash that I was supposed to have last week for 3 weeks in 2 days on alcohol. And and then I started, you know, that like the secret cash pile that you have buried deep in your room somewhere. I started using that to get alcohol, and I'm like, whoa, this is like emergency, like, oh my god, rent money, and I'm hold on here. And so of course I Venmoed my friend more money, but um, it was just so that's my strength and that's my self will. And so getting into the program, learning that you could rely on a new form of strength, and you could go to all these people for advice and help in moments of weakness, that I'm going to do something stupid, can I talk to you instead, was really relieving for me. Because I'm such a pack animal, man. Like I don't want to do things like just by myself. Like I like having a immediate group to go to. And
Yeah, I
that
think
was amazing.
like many people, I mean, even myself, have preconceived notions and expectations of what we thought the program is going to be. I mean, even when I've had people reach out and say, "Hey, I'm having trouble drinking," like I'm not going to only project the fellowship that I'm in, but I'm like, "Hey, have you tried this?" And they're just like, "Oh no, because it's this way." And I'm like, "No, bitch, it's like nowhere near that." So I myself was like, "Okay, you go and sit in a freaking circle in like a school gym and you're just like, "Hi, my name is blah blah blah, and I'm an alcoholic," and everybody's just like in this super sad, sappy mood, just repeating your name back to you. And I thought it like literally you just go around in the circle and share your pathetic life story of your drunkalog, and that is quite the opposite. So, and I thought the program was fairly religious, and I think that's why a lot of people, especially in the gay community, shy away from it. That's why I shied away from it at the beginning. But once you separate the spirituality aspect of it and religion, it's a completely different circumstance. So I mean, I went in with some expectations and some actually already prejudgment of the fellowship, and I was welcomed with open arms with people that were happy and smiling and that were not freaking depressed. Um, I mean, of course, throughout my 8 months of sobriety, I have encountered some of those people that have years of sobriety and that are just lumps on a log. But I've also encountered people that have a weekend that are extremely happy and proud of themselves for maintaining just a week. So I think anybody listening that has thought about stepping into a fellowship of any 12 step, whether it's AA, NA, CA, CMA, SAA, or even smart recovery, just anything, any type of recovery system, like go in there with an open mind. I mean, I think we as people allow our judgments or preconceived notions stop us from doing things. And I think that's our addiction trying to keep us in our addiction. So if you go in with an open mind, just like you go into most sexual encounters with an open mind, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So now that you, of course, you have those preconceived notions of just saying your name, Mets, and being repeated back to you. How has your fellowship journey looked like? I mean, have you encountered? I mean, has people just been completely open armed to you? Have you encountered bad things in the program? I mean,
Well, I think the thing, I mean, of course, I've made friends very quickly, and people, that check in on me if I don't show up for a little bit, or hey, we haven't heard from you. Are you okay? I What's going on? And I think the funniest thing that's happened to me is I never grew up with a grandmother, and there's all these like older ladies in the program that like flock to me, and I have this army of like recovery grandmothers that if I don't check in with them, they're like, "Sweetie, are you okay? Like, what's going on?" It's like, and when I talk to them in person, I don't know what it is, but they have to hold my hand when they're talking to me. And if there's like a group of them talking to me, they will like literally pass my hand off so so the new person who's talking to me can hold my hand. And I'm like, what the heck? I've never had that before, and it's been great. Um, but as far as like people like my own age, it's been really cool because um, you're there Friday and Saturday nights, and you we're kind of just sitting there, and we're just like, what do we do? And a few weeks ago, two of my friends and I were hanging out, and we're like, can we go to the movies? Yeah, you can go to the movies sober. Well, what if we mess up? I don't think we're gonna mess up if we stick together. Okay, let's try it out. And it was like the funniest thing because I'm pretty sure that this was their first time going to the movies completely sober. And then there was me, and I was just like, kind of like, yeah, this is what it's like, guys. And it's just, it was really cool to see that realization happen for them because I know that other people in recovery watched it happen for me. And just being there and being part of the journey has been really cool. There's a thing in the program in which give back what you've so been freely given. And I really scoffed at that because I thought it was like some kind of like spiritual, like sales pitch, but it was actually true. It was really cool to have someone realize they don't need to be horribly messed up to, see Bob's Burgers, you know. It was really amazing, and it's really cool to um have people to reach out to when anything is happening. Like one of my friends was like, "My car won't start. Can you look at it?" Okay, that has nothing to do with recovery, and that has nothing to do with being social. But these are the people, these are the resources that you have, and I've had quite a few like job opportunities and interviews and stuff from people I know in the program of like, oh, you do this, oh, you need to talk to so and so, and then it's just having people who know your story and know your struggles and them accepting you and them not judging you for it and then turning around and being there for you is undescribable. And it's something that I've lost a little bit in my own family, being so unreliable and so just not being the person that I needed to be. But my way of kind of, I hate to say making up for it, but my way of making it up to them is just not being that person again.
You're listening to The Sober Unicorn. We'll be right back after this short break. This episode is brought to you by Von Shine Creatives at handmadeandgreat.com. Von Shine Creatives is a sober-owned business featuring finely crafted goat's milk and vegan soaps. Treat yourself or someone you love today. Take $5 off of $25 on all your purchases site-wide, and remember, it's always free shipping. Use the coupon code SOBER, which helps support Von Shine Creatives and the Sober Unicorn podcast all at once. Link and coupon code will be in the bio. Now back to our episode. It's just like a living amends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some people in our lives that we did not fully wrong do, but we just weren't the best people towards. And so the best way to fix that is just don't be a shitty person to those people anymore
Yeah.
and just continue to be nice and be there for them. But yeah, I mean, the fellowship I think has really been a major factor in my recovery. And I mean, I expected to kind of go in and latch on to the first person that like showed me any type of friendship. Um, and that is quite the opposite because it's like no matter what recovery room I step into, like my freaking phone is full of phone numbers at this point. And sometimes it gets overwhelming because I am a part of a few group texts with like 35 other homos. Um, and it gets lit sometimes, but it's the thing is though, is just like when you sit back and have a moment to yourself and just think that those 35 people, just from that one group text, not including all the other numbers that I've gone throughout my recovery, but out of like, if I needed anything, I could just shoot a message in that group text and say, I need to talk, I need help, I need um some a hookup. No, I'm kidding. Um, but hey, I need to talk. Like, I bet you anything, my phone immediately would receive at least out of those 35, I would say at least 7 to 15 phone calls immediately.
Yeah, I had a situation that was similar, and one of my friends was actually actively driving to her like celebrate her like 30th wedding anniversary vacation thing, and I was having a difficult time, and I knew she was taking off, but I didn't know when, and so I was calling her, and I'm like, "Oh, what?" And I then after she talked me out of my panic attack, I was like, "When are you leaving for your trip?" She's like, "Oh, I'm driving there right now," and I'm like, "What?" It's
That's
just like
funny.
they care about you so much, and they just want to see you succeed, and that is something that I'm not used to because I'm used to people wanting something from me. I'm used to people being nice to me and kind of like buttering me up because they want something. And that's not
But
the
we
case in
do.
this.
we do want something from you. I mean, me being your friend and somebody in the fellowship with you, like the only thing I want from you is for you to maintain your sobriety and you to live a happy life.
Yeah,
That's
but
it.
that's it. Like you don't want my money. You don't want you know,
I mean, unless you're gonna give it
promise
to
thing.
me.
I mean,
But
hey.
so you said earlier in the episode that you're non-binary. So of
That's correct.
course we have quite a few people in the podcast that are gay, possibly on the non-binary spectrum. So how have you seen the acceptance of you being non-binary, especially going into groups that may be straight oriented, or as being somebody that's non-binary, do you find yourself leaning more towards the LGBTQ plus groups?
Good question. So for those of you listening, non-binary is kind of like a umbrella term with a bunch of other terms in it. So I'm specifically agender. Um, so which means I could go on about it forever, but um, I hid that fact for a while about myself, and I didn't immediately tell people. I just had people throw their assumptions my way, and I kind of didn't care one way or the other. Being sober, when I was drinking, I actually got into a few fistfights being addressed as the wrong thing, and I'm lucky to be relieved of that fury as my sobriety has continued to the point that I wasn't going to tell my sponsor that I was non-binary. And there was a point about 3 months into it where, people kept talking about like honesty and being true to thyself and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I can't I can't be fully honest if my sponsor doesn't even know what I am, what and who I am. And so when, I told her, she was politely confused, because no offense to her, she's a little bit older and is not familiar with all the things. And so when I went into it, she's like, oh, okay, thank you for telling me. And I was so scared that she was going to reject me. I was so scared that, like, she's like, oh, because like traditionally, your sponsor is the same gender as you. And I'm like, oh God, how am I going to do this? And then so when I told her, she's like, okay. And then that was it. I was like, oh, this is incredible. And it's really fun being in meetings with, no offense, you cis people, and you say something, and it's funny to look around the room to see all the NBs just like kind of like make eye contact with each other, like, because I've adopted the mentality that gender is a scam by bathroom companies to sell more bathrooms. And so once I adopted that attitude, being like, all of it is just funny to me. And it's been a very humorous experience since being sober. And for me, it's really nice to not be bound by those gender expectations. And even more so, being comfortable with that in sobriety, because with the freedom I get from my addiction, I can also be free to be myself, which happens to be that. And I need to acknowledge that's part of my journey. And, I was able to be bold enough to do the things I wanted to do, like speak up and be like, my pronouns are this when asked, or like I finally got to cut my hair the way I wanted to, you know? And um like I don't go to like gendered nights. Like I don't go to like guys night or girls night, because unless I'm specifically invited, because I need people to know, like I don't want to like quote intrude a space, which is a hard place to be in for non-binary folk, because it's like, oh, you coming to girls night? No. Are you coming to guys night? uh can I? It's funny, but when it comes to the queer community, they don't really care. They like you, you're coming along for the journey. They don't care about, you know, your pronouns or your orientation or anything like that. It's like, you're cool, we're cool, let's go. And it's been awesome. And it's been really cool having them just be accepting on the spot.
Yeah, I see
Um,
that gay groups are more accepting. of straight people walking in than straight groups are accepting of homosexuals
Hmm.
walking in. Don't get me wrong, I'm not. I mean, I am a huge queen, and I've gone to many of straight groups, and I personally never felt uncomfortable. I mean, you may have that one old man in the group that just looks at you a little sideways, but then you're like, "Hey, girl, hey," and then you force them to give you a hug.
Yeah, I've actually had a few people in because like I walk in and apparently I'm very obvious. I didn't know about this, and I've had quite a few people in these more straight groups actually talk to me about some of their relatives or how to address them, or like I had one of my friends. He came up to me and he said, "My granddaughter just came out as gay, and I don't really know what to like how to be supportive and stuff like that." I got to have those conversations with people because we're all in recovery and we're all trying to understand how to do life again and trying to be the best person that we need to be. And so that includes being supportive of things that we don't understand. But the coolest thing is that you don't need to understand to be accepting. And I'm glad that I get the opportunity to help these people who are not in the queer community to have kind of like a safe zone, I guess, to ask questions to, like the dumb questions you don't want to ask anyone. I'm honored that they feel comfortable enough that they can ask me that.
Yeah, because a lot of people feel, I would say, uncomfortable asking, just because some people assume that they should already know, especially with society the way it is nowadays. The genders pretty widely discussed now. But I mean, of course, old people or just people that just stay out of the pop culture talk don't know. And I think it's better to ask questions than to stay in the dark about things because the longer you stay in the dark, the less you're going to know. And then the more you're going to offend a bitch. So I, mean, I think it's super important to just ask questions. But when you go and ask that question, ask it from a sense of genuine curiosity, not from a place of like, I just don't get you. Like, why are you like this type of
Yeah.
thing.
If it's a baseline of respect, then of course I'm going to answer whatever question it is. And like being in the South, it's really different because people address you as sir or ma'am. That didn't happen in the Bay. And is it wrong every time? Yeah, but I'm not going to snap at these people because they're going into a situation blind, but they are trying to be as respectful as possible. So, of course, I'm not going to correct them by any means. I'm just going to go with it, because they're coming from a baseline of respect and they don't know how to address. And so I come at that with the same attitude of, I don't know how to ask this question. Like, go for it. Like, I'm not going to snap at you.
Yeah, I mean, I my vocabulary is kind of bad with pronouns. Um, and the only reason being is because male, female, NB, non-binary, whatever spectrum, I always say she, her. Like, I could be around a group of my completely straight friends, and I'll be referencing a full straight male. I'm like, go get her. Like, I don't know what it is. I've always, like, my entire life just referred to everybody as she, her, or like,
Well,
why
that's
she's
just part of your
crazy.
personality, man. I mean, it's just like you just go with it. You find your niche, you just keep going with it, man.
And I think people, several non-binary people that I've known in my life, like they know that I'm not using she, her as a gender term. I'm using it more as a blank. I don't know. It's not a blanket term either, but it's just very like,
It's like, dude, it's just
yeah,
you just
exactly.
call it, yeah.
Because I be using girl, and that's man, woman, I like anybody really. Um, and I mean, I think I should get better about that out of respect for other people. Um, but it's difficult, especially when I mean you've known me for a little while, and once I start going on a rant about something, the
Oh, there's no
Holden
stopping
just
you.
yes, Holden just pops off. So anybody listening that may be struggling, especially in the LGBT community, um, or non-binary spectrum that feel that they can't step into a room in fear of judgment, like what would you tell that queer person still struggling right now?
I would say that use your best judgment. Um, we are so used to walking around with this high sense of self-preservation that it's hard to recognize the acceptance right away because we're so used to getting slapped back at. Um, my personal approach is kind of coming out one at a time, uh, feeling out a specific group, feeling out a room. If you feel safe, if you feel comfortable. Um, and a lot of the time, when you're called on to share, you could be blunt about things. I mean, I've shared a lot of really dark stuff and I've been met with understanding. So if you just talk about your life and the way that things are, like dropping other details, you're going to be met with understanding. But my advice would be kind of, yes, be open and be honest, but don't bare your soul to every single person that you meet. It's very important to be honest, but it's also very important to have those tight knit people that you can go to with everything. I mean, you don't want to fourth or fifth step on every person you see immediately, you know. Um, but yeah, just use your better judgments, trust your gut, trust your higher power. If you're getting this feeling that you shouldn't open up or say certain things to someone, listen to that.
Just listen to your gut.
Mhm.
So before we end this episode, is there anything that you haven't shared that you would like to?
um, I suppose be willing to take suggestions and be willing to listen to the truth regardless of whose mouth it comes out of, because I find myself that the people who I find the most annoying say the most profound things, and I'm like, why did you have to say that? But principles above personalities is something I always have to fall back to. And I really value being told what I need to hear as opposed to what I want to hear. And when people call you out on things, it's not because they're trying to dig you down. It's because they genuinely want to see you succeed in your recovery. And that's how that happens. Um, by calling you on your shenanigans, making you see things from a third person perspective and be like, gosh dang it, you're right. I need to take a second and breathe, refocus, and do what's right in front of me and try to do the next right thing.
Oh, for sure. Like I'm a bad bitch, and my sponsor though, I'm also very sensitive, and
What?
there's been
No.
there's been so many times when my sponsor's like, "Why? I want to say this, but like I don't want you to get offended or hurt your feelings or go all dramatic." And I'm like, "Me be dramatic? Of course not."
Mm.
But in reality, it's again what you need to hear compared to what you want to hear. Because like a week ago, he finally gave me some like tough love, and I said, "You know what, bitch?" And he's like, "Oh God, here we go." And I was like, "You're right. That's it." So again, Mets, thank you so much for joining us here at the Sober Unicorn.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, well, enjoy the rest of your day and have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you. You too. Stay out of trouble.
Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes as well as our very own sober-owned shop featuring products from small businesses that are sober-owned. And remember everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.